Greetings, masters. This video is going to be about a very foundational topic to everything that you will learn or that you will implement in your children's life and in your relationship with your children. And that is, who owns who? More specifically, who owns your kid? The reason why this is important is because it affects the ethics of literally every interaction that you have with them, just like your friends and other acquaintances. Self-ownership totally and absolutely affects every interaction you had with them. If you had ownership of one of your friends, you might interact with them differently. So, determining who owns and understanding who owns your children will change everything about how you interact with them. And the answer to that, quite simply, is your kids own themselves, just like you own yourself. We all own ourselves. Why is this? I'm not sure. I mean, let me know if you want me to go into it for the university, but I guess I'll summarize Neo-Lockean property norms. And if you guys want me to go in depth, I will definitely be happy to in a follow-up. So I've had to open the windows and somebody's like leaf blowing out there because it's really hot in here. So I apologize if there's background noise, but I want to get this out there. So the basics of sort of Neo-Lockean property norms is how does one come to own something? And how does that ownership transfer from person to person? Well, put it simply, without going long form on this topic, you come to own something that is currently unowned by making first use of it. That is the fundamental rule that all property systems that have almost ever existed have started with. That is the foundation. The first person to get there and use it is the one that owns the thing, or that, said another way, has the highest claim of ownership on the thing. If somebody got there second, well, then that person loses if the ownership of that piece of property is contested. That's a pretty universal, easy to understand sort of thing. And we can go in depth on this, like I said, if you guys would like me to. But that said, it makes it abundantly clear. Your kid is obviously the first person to make use of that body. Granted, you contribute resources to growing this thing, but they are the first sort of mind that connects to the nerves, that connect to the muscles, that make use of that body. They own it, like fair and square. They got there first. Their brain and their consciousness got there first, and they have ultimate and unquestionable ownership over that body. So what does that mean? What difference does that make? Well, pretty much everything. It means that you are as restricted in your interactions with them as you are with anyone else in the world that owns themselves, your friends, your family, the people that you haven't met on the other side of the world. Like, you can't do anything to your child that you couldn't do to any of these other people that own themselves. That is their property. You can't touch it. You can't mess with it. You can't control it. You certainly can't harm it anymore. And you certainly can't do any of those things to your child's body property either. Oh, but wait, some people will say, there are times when we have to use force and to do things to our children that we couldn't do to other people, just because it's our job as parents to keep them safe, for example. And I'm happy to discuss, point by point, any exceptions that you can come up with. Just let me know, and I can make follow-on videos on the ownership of your children anytime I need to. I'm happy to do that. But the most common exceptions are for safety-related concerns. The most common one that I've gotten is, well, when my kids are about to run out into the street, I have the right to grab them. Whereas with a stranger that was determined to run out into the street, I would not have the right to grab them. Like, it's their body. I might be like, hey, stop, you're going to hurt yourself or whatever. Or I might try and be a hero and run out and grab them anyway, so to keep them from getting hit by a car, in the hopes that they will retroactively give me consent for having done something in an attempt to save their life. And that is the same for our children. In the same way that you would probably, being a good person that you are, try and grab someone to keep them from stepping out into the street to get hit by that bus about to come by that they don't see. Would that be an aggression? Would that be an assault, technically? Yes. In that moment, they did not give you their consent to grab their body, and at least if they did give you their consent, you don't know about it because you don't know them. You've never talked to them before. You don't know if they consent. You actually don't know if they're about to commit suicide or on purpose or, something like that. So you don't know that you have their consent to assault them, making it not assault. So most good people would probably do it anyway, because most people would rather have you assault them to save their life in a situation they didn't know they were about to die in. And so after the fact, after you save them, they'll probably be very grateful and will definitely give you consent. And if they don't, well, technically you're guilty of assault and probably owe some restitution. I can't imagine that being a scenario where something like that would happen, or that, any sort of court or jury would say, oh, wow, he's guilty of assault for saving that guy's life. We should give him stiff fines and blah, blah, blah. So it's kind of an edge case, but the point stands, and it goes for your interactions with your children. Again, everything must be consistent here for ethics to function. So the same thing goes for your kids as well. If your kids are about to do something that you have to stop immediately, and stopping it requires some kind of forceful intervention, like grabbing them before they step out into the street, well, you should absolutely definitely do that, because in all likelihood, their future adult self is going to be grateful that when they were a kid, you assaulted them that one time to save their life. And, if by some weird exception, for some reason, they didn't retroactively consent to you saving their life, well, I guess you can handle the restitution for that kind of event at that time. Now, I have not just made a blanket exception for you to use willy-nilly, to use force whenever you think you can make an excuse that is remotely linked to safety. No, let me be clear. Let's back up. If your kid is about to step into the street so imminently that you have to use force, you have already failed as a parent. You have already failed to do your job, which is to keep them safe. You should have set up a scenario in which that was either never a case, or you should have been able to see it coming with enough time to be able to use other peaceful methods, other non-forceful methods to prevent it from happening. Like, hey, you're about to walk in the street, be careful. Hey, there's a car coming, it'll hit you. Like, use your voice, use your words. Maybe just stand there in between them in the street. There's all sorts of things that you can do up to when you have to forcefully grab them and yank them out of the street. So if you have gotten to that point where you're having to use force, you have already failed. You need to admit that. You need to plan better in the future. You need to process that situation to find out what you did wrong or what you could have done differently to prevent you from having to get to that situation of using force on them. And I realize the street scenario is sort of a weird edge case where no one would really have a complaint about that, but it's a good example scenario that you can apply to just about every other situation in which you would have to, in the moment for their safety, use force. I guess let me come up with one of those situations. So let's say your kid is sick and needs a shot with a specific medication at the doctor's. And if you don't do anything, if you just kind of pick them up and put them in the car and drive to the doctor's without telling them even where you're going or whatever, and you walk into the doctor's office, and then the first thing they know about what's about to happen is the nurse unsheathing the knife and coming at their arm, and they're going to disconsent. And at that moment, you can't say, well, this is for your safety, we got to use force in this moment and just make it happen. No, sorry, you failed. You have failed. If you've gotten to that point, you have failed. Not only that, but that is not usually an imminent thing like a bus coming up the street would be that would, instantly flatten them, right? It's like you could probably leave the doctor's office and go home and come back in an hour after you've talked to them. So there's most situations are not that imminent that threat that force is a definite requirement. Most scenarios, what you should have done, and we'll make a whole video on this soon, is prepare them for what's coming. Teach them in advance. Set up the situation such that there's the greatest possibility that force will not be required. Do sort of your prep work, your homework, and don't set your kids up to fail and then use your failure as an excuse to use force on them. It's your failure. And of course, if you have to save their life, save their life. But generally, if it gets to that point, you need to really reflect and find out how you can do better going forward, because you kind of already messed up. So your kids own themselves. You own yourself. You each need to treat each other with that same level of respect. Don't let your kids run over you. You own yourself. Don't run over your kids. They own themselves. You are equals in that regard, and you should treat each other like those equals, with negotiation and respect and kindness and friendship and love and empathy. And as a parent, it's kind of hard to just lose sometimes. Sometimes they're going to put their foot down on something that isn't like life and death safety related, and you just gotta let them have it. You just have to let them win sometimes, because that's what being an owner is. And if you never let them win on even the little things, then it's like you're going to be trying to teach them that they own themselves while denying that ownership in practice. And it'll be confusing for them, and it won't make any sense, and the whole thing will be ineffective and pointless. I'll probably do a follow-up to this video with more thoughts on it, but I wanted to get this initial one out there now for you guys. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you have any, edge cases where you think, force would be justified. And I'm happy to create follow-ups on this one, because this is fundamental. This is one of the most important videos on this university. Your children own themselves. You have to treat them the same way you'd treat anyone else that owns themselves. All right, guys. Talk to you later.